long before cities existed, before farming, before language became complex enough to explain danger. Humans lived at the edge of water. Rivers carved the land and animals gathered to drink. Fish were easy food. Plants grew thick along wet soil. Water meant life, and every early human group depended on it. But water also hid something else. Unlike fire, it did not burn the skin to warn. Unlike cliffs, it did not clearly show its drop. Unlike predators, it did not chase. It simply waited. The earliest humans did not understand drowning. They had no word for oxygen, lungs, pressure, or buoyancy. When someone stepped too far into a riverbank and disappeared beneath the surface, the event made no sound and left almost no evidence. There was no blood, no tracks, no struggle to analyze. One moment a person stood, the next moment they were gone. To minds shaped by direct cause and visible effect, this kind of death was terrifying because it had no clear attacker. The land was understandable. Tall grass meant hidden predators. Sharp rocks cut skin. Fire burned. Falling hurt. But deep water did something different. It removed a person instantly and silently. Even experienced hunters could misjudge the riverbed. A safe, shallow area could suddenly drop into darkness. Lakes sometimes appeared calm, but concealed steep underwater slopes. Coastal shores changed with tides. A step forward could turn firm ground into empty space. Those who survived began behaving differently around water. Early humans that rushed confidently into dark water died more often. Those who paused lived. The difference was small at first, almost invisible across a single lifetime. But across thousands of generations, it reshaped human behavior. Some individuals felt discomfort standing near water they could not see through. Their stomach tightened, their muscles hesitated. They leaned backward without knowing why. They did not choose caution consciously. Their bodies refused forward movement. This hesitation saved them. Children who instinctively stepped back from murky pools were less likely to drown. Adults who felt uneasy crossing unknown rivers searched longer for safe paths. Groups that camped a few meters higher avoided sudden flooding during storms. Survival favored those who reacted emotionally before they understood intellectually. Over time, the human brain developed a fast alarm response, triggered not by movement, but by absence of visible ground. Dark depth became a signal. Even animals demonstrate similar reactions. Many land mammals avoid entering opaque water unless desperate. But humans developed an especially strong reaction because they depended on water daily. They could not avoid rivers entirely, so evolution favored recognition rather than avoidance. The brain learned to treat unclear depth as a potential threat greater than visible predators. A predator might be fought or escaped. Deep water gave no chance. Archaeological sites show repeated patterns. Camps rarely formed directly on steep banks, even when resources were abundant there. Instead, settlements appeared slightly elevated or near gradual slopes. This was not architecture or planning. These were instinctive placement choices. Groups that ignored such positioning lost members during floods and erosion. Those who respected invisible risk kept their numbers stable. Over thousands of years, behavior became instinct. Fear is often described as learned, but in this case it emerged before teaching. A child who had never seen drowning still hesitated near a deep well. The reaction happened faster than observation. Muscles stiffened and breathing changed. The eyes searched for bottom reference. Without it, discomfort increased. The brain treated uncertainty itself as danger. The absence of visible support triggered protective tension. This response became part of human perception. Early humans did not analyze why shallow, clear water felt safer than dark, still water, but they consistently chose the safer option. Gradually, this preference became universal across different human populations separated by vast distances. From African river valleys to Asian floodplains to coastal Europe, human groups showed the same caution patterns. Independent evolution would not produce identical behavior everywhere unless survival strongly depended on it. Water was necessary, yet feared. This paradox shaped early movement patterns. Humans followed rivers for migration but crossed them carefully. They forded at bends where sediment built natural ramps. They used fallen trees. They waited for dry seasons. All of these behaviors emerged long before engineering knowledge. The decision process was emotional, not analytical. The feeling of unease near deep unknown water slowed movement enough to prevent fatal mistakes. The brain rewarded hesitation. Individuals who paused lived longer and reproduced more often. Their children inherited slightly stronger sensitivity to depth uncertainty. Over generations, the emotional reaction intensified into something recognizable today. Modern people often feel uneasy looking into deep ocean water, even when standing safely on land. The reaction is disproportionate to actual risk in that moment, but it reflects ancient survival pressures where misjudgment meant immediate death. The earliest fear was not of water itself. Humans drank, bathed, and walked through shallow streams comfortably. The fear targeted depth without visibility. Clear, shallow water rarely triggered panic. Murky, still water did. The brain distinguished between known support and unknown absence. This is crucial because it shows the response is specific, not general. Evolution shaped a targeted alarm rather than a broad avoidance of all water. This specificity indicates repeated deadly encounters. Countless individuals throughout prehistory stepped where ground suddenly vanished. Each incident removed a person from the population instantly, leaving behind only those who felt hesitation. Over immense time spans, Natural selection embedded this reaction into neural circuitry. It became faster than reasoning. The body reacts before conscious thought forms. Thus, what modern humans call fear of deep water began not as irrational anxiety, but as inherited memory. No single ancestor remembered drowning events consciously, yet collectively the species carried the result. The nervous system treats unseen depth as immediate risk because for most of human existence it truly was. This instinct formed one of the earliest protective emotions humans possessed, long before structured societies or complex tools. The first human relationship with water was therefore dual. It was provider and executioner, food source and silent killer. Every approach to a riverbank contained uncertainty. And from that uncertainty emerged one of the oldest survival mechanisms embedded in the human mind: hesitation at the edge of darkness, beneath the surface. That hesitation kept early humans alive long enough for civilization to exist at all. As human groups continued living near rivers and lakes, they began developing patterns of behavior that appeared almost ritualistic. No one explained them, no one taught them formally. Yet they repeated across generations with surprising consistency. When approaching water, people slowed down. They tested ground with sticks. They threw stones into the shallows before stepping forward. Even young individuals copied these actions without understanding their purpose. This was not culture yet. It was instinct guiding imitation. The earliest humans did not possess complex teaching systems. Survival knowledge spread mainly through observation and repetition. However, something unusual occurred with deep water. Even before observing accidents, individuals displayed hesitation. When a child saw adults pause at a shoreline, the behavior matched a feeling already present. The environment confirmed the emotion rather than creating it. In evolutionary terms, this mattered greatly. If fear had depended purely on learning, many individuals would die before acquiring the lesson. Deep water kills quickly. A person cannot practice survival after drowning once. Therefore, a species relying only on experience would lose too many members to maintain population stability. The only viable solution was inherited reaction. The brain had to signal danger before evidence appeared. That signal took the form of discomfort. People described it through body reactions rather than thoughts. A tightening chest, a sudden alertness, eyes searching for bottom visibility. Even in calm weather, black water caused hesitation. The reaction occurred without visible threat because the threat historically existed even when unseen. Underwater slopes, soft mud, hidden holes, and sudden currents did not announce themselves. Those who ignored the feeling disappeared from the group. Early communities were small. Losing even one adult reduced hunting strength and protection ability. Losing children threatened long-term survival. Over time, communities unconsciously favored individuals who respected unease near water. They stayed together more consistently. Their numbers remained stable across seasons. The behavioral difference gradually became characteristic of human populations rather than random personality variation. The environment reinforced the instinct repeatedly. Floodplains changed shape after heavy rain. A safe crossing one week became deadly the next. Animals often avoided certain areas long before humans recognized why. Early humans who watched animal hesitation and felt their own caution aligned survived longer. But the key point is they felt hesitation first. Observation confirmed rather than initiated their reaction. This distinction separated water danger from most other threats. Predators created sound, movement, and scent. Fire produced heat and light. Even cliffs could be seen. Deep water removed visible cues. Therefore, the brain learned to treat absence of information as information itself. Darkness beneath the reflective surface became equivalent to potential death. Humans evolved sensitivity not only to danger, but to uncertainty. Over generations, this changed how humans moved through landscapes. Travel routes followed predictable patterns. Instead of shortest paths, groups preferred gradual banks and braided river channels. These were longer but safer. Individuals often walked upstream or downstream to find a better crossing rather than risk unknown depths directly ahead. This behavior appears inefficient until considering survival probability. A delayed arrival is better than permanent disappearance. Archaeological evidence supports repeated, careful crossings. Stone tool sites frequently appear near shallow gravel bars rather than steep banks. Camps cluster near water access points that slope gently. This pattern occurs across continents separated by vast distances and time periods. Such consistency suggests biological preference rather than coincidence. Humans were not calculating risk mathematically. They were following internal resistance to stepping into uncertain depth. Children demonstrated the instinct most clearly. Even very young individuals, barely capable of coordinated movement, showed caution at the water edge. They leaned backward or reached for support. Unlike fear of animals, which required experience, depth avoidance appeared immediately. This reaction improved survival because children are naturally curious and mobile. Without an internal brake, mortality would rise sharply. Parents reinforced but did not create the behavior. Adults pulled children away from dangerous edges, yet many children already hesitated. The emotional system prepared them before social correction. Over time, culture and instinct merged. Stories likely formed around disappearances. Groups could not explain the mechanism of drowning, so they described the water as taking people. The explanation varied, but the behavior remained constant. Keep distance from dark depth. This early union of emotion and narrative shaped memory. A disappearance near water left strong psychological impact because no visible attacker existed. The mind searched for agency. Even before myth, the experience intensified caution. Repeated across generations, the emotional weight amplified inherited fear. The brain did not distinguish between biological reaction and social meaning. Both pointed to the same conclusion: unknown depth equals danger. Gradually, humans began modifying environments slightly. They cleared banks near camps. They chose resting places above flood levels. They stored tools away from slippery edges. These were small actions, not engineering, but they show an important transition. Fear did not merely prevent action. It guided safer interaction. Humans still depended on water daily. Complete avoidance was impossible. Instead, instinct shaped behavior to reduce fatal mistakes. The brain's alarm became predictive rather than reactive. Instead of responding after a fall, it acted before movement. The discomfort felt disproportionate because it protected against irreversible outcomes. A person could ignore hunger briefly but not drowning. Therefore, natural selection weighted water caution heavily. Even slight hesitation dramatically improved survival odds over long timescales. This mechanism explains modern reactions. A person standing beside a calm, dark lake today may feel tension despite rational knowledge of safety. The mind inherited conditions where similar situations repeatedly ended lives. The body responds to patterns older than conscious reasoning. What feels irrational now once functioned as precise environmental assessment. Early humans lived constantly at the boundary between necessity and risk. They needed water for drinking, food, and travel, yet every approach required trust in unseen ground. Over countless generations, those who trusted too quickly vanished. Those who doubted survived. Doubt became instinct. Instinct became universal. And without language, science, or measurement, humanity learned its first safety rule: pause at the edge of the unknown. That pause preserved enough lives for future generations to begin understanding the danger intellectually. But long before understanding came emotion, and emotion was already protecting them. For early humans, danger usually had a face: sharp teeth, claws, movement in tall grass, the crack of a branch. Predators announced themselves through sound, smell, or motion. Survival depended on noticing these signs and reacting quickly. Over time, humans became extremely good at reading patterns in the environment. A disturbed flock of birds meant something was moving below. Sudden silence meant something was hunting. The brain evolved to interpret signals, but deep water broke this rule. Water contained threats that did not behave like animals. It did not stalk, charge, or roar. It removed a person without leaving a visible struggle. A human stepping into unseen depth did not fight an opponent. They lost footing, inhaled water, and vanished beneath a surface that quickly returned to calm. The environment erased evidence almost instantly. This created a different type of fear. Most fears come after recognizing a threat. Water fear came from recognizing the absence of safety. Early humans could not rely on the senses they trusted on land. Hearing detected nothing beneath still water. Smell revealed nothing. Vision showed only reflection. The brain faced a condition it was not originally designed for, a deadly situation without detectable cues. In response, it developed a new strategy. Instead of waiting for danger signals, the brain began treating uncertainty itself as danger. If the ground could not be seen, assumed stability disappeared. The nervous system triggered caution automatically. This reaction was faster than reasoning and required no past personal experience. It did not need to understand drowning to avoid it. Those who lacked this response faced constant risk. Riverbanks often appeared gradual, but hid sudden drop-offs created by erosion. Lakes accumulated soft sediment that collapsed under weight. Coastal waters changed with tides, leaving unexpected deep channels. Even a strong adult could not recover once balance was lost in deep, cold water. Without flotation or swimming skill, survival time was extremely short. The environment acted like a predator that could not be fought. Unlike animals, deep water offered no negotiation. Strength, speed, and intelligence mattered little after submersion. This meant traditional survival advantages failed. The only effective defense occurred before entry. Hesitation at the edge became the primary survival behavior. Evolution, therefore, reinforced psychological resistance more strongly than physical ability. Groups learned this repeatedly. If a predator killed a person, others saw the cause and adapted tactics. But when water took someone, witnesses saw only disappearance. The unpredictability increased perceived danger. Humans are particularly sensitive to events lacking explanation. The mind exaggerates threat when patterns cannot be identified. Over generations, this magnified caution around water bodies. Natural selection favored anticipation over reaction. Individuals who required visible proof stepped forward too far. Individuals who retreated at mere suspicion remained alive. Even small tendencies accumulated across generations. Slight discomfort became strong unease. Strong unease became instinctive avoidance of certain conditions. Dark water, sudden depth changes, reflective surfaces hiding bottom visibility. The brain began mapping environmental features linked to drowning. Still dark water triggered stronger reaction than flowing shallow water. Narrow crossings felt safer than wide ones. Sloped banks were preferred over vertical edges. These preferences appear rational now, but originally they emerged without understanding physics. They were emotional outputs shaped by survival statistics repeated thousands of times. Other animals feared predators directly. Humans uniquely feared environmental states. The absence of visible support, the distortion of reflection, the inability to judge distance through water all activated caution. This broadened the concept of danger beyond creatures to conditions. Water became not just habitat, but a potential event waiting to occur. The invisible predator was depth itself. It did not move, yet constantly changed location with seasons. Rainfall expanded rivers overnight. Drought exposed deceptive mud that trapped feet. Ice formed surfaces that appeared solid but fractured under weight. Each variation reinforced the same rule. Unseen beneath water equals threat. This fear proved adaptive across climates. In tropical regions, deep pools contained animals capable of ambush. In colder regions, cold shock caused rapid incapacitation. In flood regions, currents pulled individuals under debris. Though causes differed, the survival strategy remained identical. Pause before entry, test stability, avoid uncertain depth. The universality of this behavior suggests deep evolutionary roots. Human populations separated geographically still exhibit similar caution patterns near water. Children lean back from docks even without prior accidents. Adults instinctively search for bottom reference before stepping forward. The reaction does not require instruction. It is triggered by visual perception alone. This is the hallmark of an evolved defense. The brain learned that deep water acts like a predator without sensory signals. Therefore, it generated its own signal, fear, not panic after falling, but tension before stepping. The emotion replaced missing environmental warnings. Where nature offered no alert, biology created one internally. The invisible predator shaped human perception more subtly than teeth or claws. Predators trained awareness outward toward movement. Water trained awareness inward toward uncertainty. Humans became cautious not only of what they saw, but of what they could not verify. This mental shift influenced later problem-solving, risk evaluation, and decision-making beyond water environments. But in its origin, the lesson was simple. If you cannot see the ground, assume it is not there. Those who followed this unspoken rule survived encounters with the most silent threat in their world. On land, survival often favored the strongest. A fast runner could escape, a powerful adult could fight, a skilled hunter could predict movement and strike first. Even smaller individuals could climb trees, throw stones, or call for help. Terrestrial danger allowed reaction, but deep water changed the rules entirely. Once a human lost stable footing in depth beyond standing height, nearly every physical advantage disappeared. The body is not naturally built for water. Human limbs evolved for walking and grasping, not for efficient propulsion in liquid. The chest and hips create uneven buoyancy. The head is heavy compared to other mammals adapted to swimming. Without learned technique, a person thrashes rather than moves forward. Thrashing accelerates exhaustion and forces inhalation of water. Early humans did not understand this process. They only observed its outcome. Even strong adults vanished quickly. Strength that could wrestle animals proved meaningless against sinking. A powerful individual who stepped into sudden depth reacted instinctively by pushing downward, searching for ground that was no longer there. Panic increased oxygen demand. Cold water shocked breathing rhythm. Within moments, coordination failed. Witnesses saw a brief struggle, then silence. Groups learned that physical dominance offered no protection here. This created a unique psychological effect. Humans respect strength as security, but near deep water, the strongest hunter could disappear just as easily as a child. This unpredictability intensified fear. A threat that ignores hierarchy feels more dangerous than one that can be resisted. Therefore, behavior changed before bodies changed. Humans did not evolve into aquatic swimmers immediately. Instead, they evolved to avoid needing swimming at all. The safest individual was not the strongest, but the most cautious. This reversed normal survival logic. Caution gained higher value than bravery in water environments. Communities unconsciously selected for restraint. Those who rushed ahead to prove confidence took greater risk. Those who paused survived to reproduce. Over thousands of years, hesitation became a trait passed down. The brain began linking forward movement toward uncertain depth with internal alarm signals. Tightened muscles, increased heart rate, narrowed focus. These reactions occur before conscious decision. Modern people often interpret them as anxiety, but originally they were precise warnings. The body attempted to stop a fatal step. In prehistoric conditions, ignoring that sensation often meant death within seconds. Therefore, natural selection favored individuals who obeyed discomfort rather than those who suppressed it. Water punished error instantly. Many land dangers allow learning after injury. A burn heals, a fall bruises. An animal attack might leave scars but permit survival. Deep water rarely gave second chances. Because learning from experience was unreliable, evolution relied on anticipation instead. The brain had to treat potential drowning as already occurring and intervene early. This shaped human risk perception broadly. People became wary of surfaces they could not evaluate visually. Mud, thin ice, unstable ground, and darkness all trigger similar caution. These reactions share the same root: fear of losing support unexpectedly. Deep water was likely the earliest environment to create this category of danger in human cognition. Children illustrate the instinct clearly. When approaching a pool with unclear bottom, many children stop abruptly, even without prior accident. They extend a foot slowly or reach for an adult. This behavior appears before cultural teaching. It represents inherited expectation that certain surfaces may collapse beneath weight. In early environments, this response saved entire groups. Travel often required crossing rivers. A single careless entry could cause panic among others attempting rescue, multiplying casualties. Groups that maintained distance and searched patiently for safe crossings preserved more members. Over generations, group survival reinforced individual hesitation. The emotion also affected leadership behavior. Confident individuals who ignored fear risked community trust if they caused deaths. Cautious leaders who tested paths gained reliability. Social respect, therefore, aligned with survival instinct. Cultural norms eventually praised prudence near water, even without understanding its biological origin. Water became associated with humility. On land, mastery came from dominance. Near water, survival came from restraint. Humans learned long before conscious philosophy that some environments cannot be conquered by force. They must be approached carefully or not at all. This lesson, repeated across continents, shaped collective human behavior. The invisible predator did not require pursuit. It waited for misjudgment. It exploited confidence. It ignored experience. Therefore, the safest mind was the one that doubted its own certainty when facing unknown depth. Evolution rewarded skepticism toward apparently calm surfaces. Over immense time, this created a powerful internal rule. If movement forward removes visible support, stop. The rule applied regardless of strength, age, or skill. It operated automatically and often emotionally. Later civilizations would teach swimming and build boats, but the instinct remained underneath knowledge. Even expert swimmers feel unease when the bottom disappears from view. This is not contradiction. It is memory older than skill. The body remembers conditions where skill did not exist, and survival depended only on refusal to step into depth. Long before humans learned to float, they learned to hesitate. And that hesitation kept more people alive than any physical advantage they possessed. Daylight gave humans a fragile sense of control. In sunlight, the surface of water sometimes revealed its secrets. Pebbles could be seen beneath clear streams. Gentle ripples showed direction of flow. Shadows hinted at depth changes. Early humans depended heavily on sight, more than most mammals, and daylight allowed them to interpret the landscape well enough to survive. They could estimate distance, judge footing, and identify safer entry points. But night erased all of this instantly. When darkness arrived, water became almost identical to empty space. The reflective surface merged with the sky. Depth lost contrast. Edges blurred. A person could no longer tell where land ended and danger began. Even shallow areas looked bottomless. The human eye, adapted for daylight vision, struggled to detect subtle texture differences in low light. The result was catastrophic. Stepping near water after sunset was not merely risky, it was unpredictable. A safe shoreline during the day transformed into a lethal trap at night. A foot placed slightly forward might meet solid ground or nothing at all. Early humans who moved confidently in darkness often vanished without warning. Unlike land obstacles that could be felt or heard, water gave almost no feedback until balance was lost. This created a powerful behavioral pattern. Groups gradually stopped approaching water in darkness unless absolutely necessary. Not because they understood visual perception, but because experience repeatedly punished those who did. Over generations, a simple rule formed: avoid dark water entirely. Even thirsty individuals waited until morning rather than risk unseen depth. The fear intensified beyond normal caution. Humans did not just avoid entering water at night, they avoided standing close to it. Camps moved away from shorelines after sunset. Fires were placed facing inward rather than toward river edges. The darkness beyond the light circle represented unknown ground, and unknown ground near water meant sudden disappearance. Archaeological settlement patterns support this behavior. Early camps rarely sit directly on steep banks despite easier access to drinking water. Instead, they appear slightly elevated, sometimes inconveniently distant from the source. Carrying water required effort, but safety outweighed efficiency. The extra distance reduced accidental falls in darkness and protected sleeping individuals from rolling toward unseen edges. Night magnified the invisible predator. During day, at least some cues existed. At night, none remained. The brain responded strongly to this condition. Humans evolved poor night vision compared to many animals, so their survival depended on restricting movement when visual information was insufficient. Water represented the most dangerous environment to navigate blindly. This limitation influenced daily schedules. Early humans concentrated water activities in daylight hours. Fishing, crossing, and collecting resources occurred when the sun was high enough to reveal bottom contours. As light faded, attention shifted away from rivers and lakes. The circadian rhythm of activity partly reflected safety near water rather than simply rest cycles. Children were especially vulnerable. A child wandering at night toward a reflective surface could not distinguish shallow puddle from deep channel. Communities likely learned through tragedy that darkness near water demanded strict boundaries. Adults guarded edges more carefully after sunset. Over time, protective behavior merged with inherited caution, reinforcing avoidance. The brain encoded darkness and depth together. Modern humans often feel disproportionate unease near black water, even in safe environments such as pools. The reaction combines two ancient signals: inability to see ground and reduced ability to recover balance in darkness. The body assumes worst-case conditions because historically those conditions were fatal. Animals also altered behavior around water at night. Many prey species drink cautiously under moonlight and avoid deeper sections entirely. Early humans observing these patterns likely felt confirmation of their own instincts. However, their dependence on sight made the threat greater for them than for nocturnal animals. A misstep could not be corrected quickly enough. Weather increased the danger further. Rain blurred boundaries and softened soil. A bank stable during dry daylight could collapse under wet nighttime footing. Mist reduced internal hesitation survived these changing environments. Fear, therefore, shaped spatial awareness. Humans began mapping safe distances mentally. They recognized landmarks that marked secure ground. They memorized tree positions and rock placements relative to water lines. This spatial caution extended into broader cognitive abilities, but its origin lay in avoiding unseen depth after dark. Over generations, the association became instinctive. Dark, reflective surfaces triggered alertness, whether near ocean, river, or still pond. The reaction required no explanation. It occurred because ancestors who ignored it did not remain part of the population long enough to pass on different behavior. Night water taught humans an essential survival principle. If you cannot see where to place your weight, do not place it at all. This rule appears simple, yet it protected countless lives across prehistoric time. By limiting movement in darkness near water, early humans avoided the environment most capable of removing them silently. The fear of night water became one of the strongest environmental cautions embedded in the human mind, persisting long after artificial light would make such conditions less dangerous. Water did not stay where humans expected it to be. Unlike rocks or trees, shorelines changed constantly. A river that looked calm one evening could swell overnight after distant rain. A lake could rise slowly across weeks, covering ground that had always felt safe. The land near water was never permanent. Early humans who trusted yesterday's memory too strongly risked stepping into space that no longer held them. This made water different from every other terrain feature. A cliff remained a cliff. A fallen log stayed in place. But the edge of water shifted silently. Because early humans relied heavily on memory to navigate, moving shorelines created a dangerous illusion of familiarity. Someone could walk confidently toward a spot they had stood many times before and suddenly find nothing beneath their foot. Many deaths likely happened this way. A person walking in dim light toward a remembered path might step beyond the new boundary. The surface appeared unchanged from a distance. Only at the moment of weight transfer did reality reveal itself. Such events reinforced an important survival adjustment. Never trust memory alone near water. The brain began favoring real-time verification. Humans developed a tendency to visually recheck ground near shorelines, even when certain they knew the terrain. This behavior appears minor, but over generations it became a consistent habit. People slowed automatically near water edges, scanning carefully before committing their weight. The act of pausing became standard movement pattern. This pause protected entire groups. In early communities, individuals often walked in lines along riverbanks. If the leader stepped too far, those behind might follow reflexively. But hesitation interrupted this chain reaction. When the first person stopped to verify ground, others did the same. A simple delay prevented multiple losses at once. Flood cycles reinforced caution repeatedly. Seasonal rains expanded rivers far beyond normal boundaries. Areas used safely for months became temporary channels. Mud concealed depth differences. What appeared solid might collapse under pressure. Groups learned not by calculation, but by survival outcome, that edges could not be trusted even in familiar territory. Children learned the behavior quickly, not through explanation, but through imitation and instinct. They saw adults slow down, and their own internal unease matched the behavior. Over time, communities developed unwritten spatial rules. Safe zones were maintained slightly away from water. Sleeping areas were positioned above high water marks. These decisions required no engineering knowledge, only repeated recognition that water moved unpredictably. The moving edge also influenced travel timing. Early humans preferred crossing rivers at predictable seasonal lows. Waiting meant hunger or delay, but crossing during high water meant disappearance. Groups that respected seasonal hesitation survived migrations more reliably. Patience became a survival strategy rather than weakness. This patience shaped human temperament. While hunting demanded bursts of speed, water demanded restraint. Individuals capable of switching between these modes lived longer. The brain strengthened circuits that suppressed impulsive movement near uncertain ground. Over generations, the emotional response to approaching water included a natural slowing of pace. The environment trained anticipation. Instead of reacting after slipping, humans learned to expect change before it occurred. They watched vegetation lines, moisture in soil, and sound differences near shore. These observations began as instinctive attention rather than analytical reasoning. Fear directed perception towards subtle cues. Night amplified the moving edge danger. Without visible reference points, even slight water rise erased boundaries completely. A safe path from earlier in the day vanished. People therefore avoided traveling close to water after dark, not only due to depth, but due to shifting position. The combination created maximum uncertainty. Groups that ignored this paid heavily. Losing multiple members in one night could threaten the survival of a small band. Over thousands of years, communities that instinctively established distance buffers around water endured longer. The behavior eventually appeared universal among human populations living in flood-prone regions. This created early spatial planning, not conscious design, but patterned placement. Campsites consistently appeared above the highest known water reach. Tools were stored away from slippery banks. Fire locations marked safe interior space. The moving edge of water shaped the earliest form of settlement logic. The brain internalized a new rule. Not only unseen depth is dangerous, but known depth may change. This expanded fear from a single moment to a continuous awareness. Humans became cautious, not just stepping into water, but standing near it. The margin between safety and danger required respect because it could relocate at any time. Modern humans still display this instinct. People feel uneasy standing close to large waves, even without direct experience of being pulled in. The motion suggests boundary instability. The body interprets movement as potential ground loss. The reaction originates from ancient conditions where shifting edges caused fatal misjudgments. Through countless generations, water taught humans distrust of permanence. Land could be mapped mentally. Water required constant reassessment. Those who reassessed survived. Those who relied solely on memory disappeared. The emotional system adapted by generating caution whenever approaching environments capable of sudden change. Thus, the fear expanded beyond depth into variability itself. The safest step was the one delayed long enough to confirm it still existed. Among early humans, the youngest members revealed survival patterns most clearly. Adults learned caution through both instinct and experience, but children had almost no experience at all. Yet, even without witnessing drowning, many showed hesitation near edges. When approaching steep drops, fires, or deep water, they slowed, leaned away, or reached for support. This reaction appeared before language instruction and before understanding danger. Deep water produced one of the strongest reactions. A child could walk confidently across uneven ground, but suddenly stop at a dark pool. The behavior seemed inconsistent unless viewed through survival history. Over thousands of generations, children who moved forward without hesitation were less likely to survive long enough to grow older. Those who felt unease stepped back. Only the latter passed on their tendencies. This process shaped human development. Natural selection does not operate only on adult traits. If a characteristic increases survival during childhood, it spreads rapidly. Early human environments contained constant hazards, but water posed a unique threat because curiosity naturally drew children toward it. Shiny surfaces, reflections, and animal activity made water attractive. Without an internal braking mechanism, mortality would rise dramatically. The brain solved this through instinctive inhibition. Instead of teaching avoidance after accidents, evolution built caution into perception itself. Children approaching unclear depth experienced imbalanced sensations. The body leaned backward automatically. Muscles tightened without conscious decision. These reactions prevented the fatal forward step. Parents reinforced the response unintentionally. When adults pulled children away from edges, the action aligned with feelings the child already had. This strengthened the association between discomfort and safety. Over generations, cultural behavior and biological instinct merged into a powerful protective system that required minimal explanation. Observations across modern populations support this pattern. Very young children unfamiliar with swimming often refuse to step into water deeper than visible bottom. Even when encouraged gently, they cling to stable ground. This reluctance is not purely fear of punishment or unfamiliarity. It reflects inherited risk detection shaped long before modern environments existed. Early communities depended heavily on child survival. In small groups, each individual represented future stability. Losing children frequently threatened continuity. Therefore, any trait improving childhood survival spread quickly. Fear of deep water became one of the most valuable emotional safeguards in early life stages. The reaction also influenced play behavior. Children explored widely but established invisible boundaries near water edges. They might throw objects toward water, yet avoid following them. This distance maintenance reduced accidental falls. The behavior appeared spontaneous rather than instructed, suggesting internal origin. Adults noticed differences between individuals. Some children were more cautious than others. Over generations, the cautious ones survived more consistently. Gradually, the average response strengthened across the population. What began as slight hesitation became common human behavior. This development occurred before teaching swimming. Swimming is a learned skill, requiring guidance and repeated practice. Early humans likely possessed minimal swimming ability. Therefore, avoidance mattered more than adaptation. The safest child was not the one who could recover from falling, but the one who never fell. The emotional system prioritized prevention. Unlike pain reflexes that act after contact, depth fear acted before movement. It represented predictive safety rather than reactive defense. The brain evaluated visual uncertainty and produced physical resistance to forward motion. Water edges became early learning zones. Children learned to observe adult behavior there carefully. Even playful adults moved more slowly near deep sections. This consistent modeling reinforced inherited caution. Over time, the combined effect of instinct and imitation produced strong avoidance patterns. the survival advantage accumulated quietly. Each generation lost fewer individuals to drowning than the previous one, possessing weaker hesitation. The difference might seem small in a single lifetime, but enormous across evolutionary timescales. Gradually, hesitation became expectation rather than exception. This trait extended beyond water. Children also showed caution near heights and unstable ground. However, deep water triggered particularly strong reactions because it offered no recovery opportunity. A fall from moderate height might injure but allow survival. A fall into deep water often ended life immediately. Therefore, natural selection weighted water caution heavily. The brain integrated visual depth perception with balance control systems. When bottom reference disappeared, posture adjusted backward automatically. This mechanism required no conscious thought and worked even before complex reasoning developed. The result was simple but powerful. Children who stepped back lived long enough to become adults. Those adults passed on the same internal signal to their offspring. Over immense spans of time, humanity inherited a protective discomfort that activated at the boundary between visible ground and hidden depth. This early safeguard allowed later generations to eventually learn swimming and build safer water practices. But the instinct formed long before those advances, preserving countless lives in environments where a single careless step could erase the future entirely. Long before formal teaching existed, children still learned rules. They did not learn through explanation, but through patterns they felt and observed. Near fire, they sensed heat. Near cliffs, they sensed imbalance. Near deep water, they sensed uncertainty. The brain translated these sensations into behavior before language could describe them. Adults did not need to explain danger in detail because the child's body already resisted it. Water edges became silent classrooms. When families gathered near rivers, an adult intervened physically. The child associated the adult's urgency with their own discomfort. Over time, the two signals merged. Biological fear gained social confirmation. The lesson became deeply rooted, far stronger than ordinary instruction. This produced reliable behavior across generations. Unlike skills that required practice, avoidance needed only reinforcement. A child did not need to experience near drowning to understand distance from water. The mind linked unease with safety. Even in play, boundaries remained intact. Children played beside water, but rarely beyond the point where footing could be seen. Groups benefited collectively when multiple children shared similar. Modern societies depend on explicit rules. Early humans depended on emotion and observation. The most effective survival behaviors were those requiring no explanation. Fear of deep water fit this requirement perfectly. It activated instantly and universally without translation. Communities eventually embedded warnings into behavior rituals. Approaching water involved deliberate steps. Individuals knelt, touched the surface, or entered slowly. These actions may appear practical, but they also reinforced caution culturally. Children copied them and internalized the pace. Rapid entry felt wrong even without understanding why. The lesson extended beyond individuals. Visitors to unfamiliar territory often followed local movement patterns automatically. If the group slowed near certain areas, newcomers slowed too. This collective caution protected everyone regardless of personal experience. The behavior spread because it was visible and intuitive. Night reinforced daytime teaching. After sunset, adults limited children's movement near water completely. The contrast between allowed daytime approach and nighttime restriction strengthened the association between darkness, depth, and danger. Over generations, children no longer needed instruction to avoid black water surfaces. Emotional memory proved stronger than factual memory. A child might forget a spoken warning, but rarely forgot the feeling of being pulled back urgently. The brain stored emotional events more deeply. Water-related interventions, therefore, created lasting caution patterns into adulthood. This early training influenced personality development. Individuals who respected internal signals survived and passed those tendencies onward. The human species gradually favored attentiveness to subtle environmental cues. This capacity later supported complex decision-making in many contexts, but its early foundation lay in avoiding lethal environments. Water fear became both personal and shared knowledge. A person felt hesitation individually, yet observed the same hesitation in others. This mutual behavior created trust in the reaction. If everyone paused at the same point, the boundary became socially real even without or coastal inlets. Children learned through instinct, reinforced by observation, to maintain distance from unseen depth. Gradually, the species depended on this silent education. Language would eventually explain drowning, currents, and buoyancy. But long before explanation, humanity already possessed a working safety system. It relied on emotion, imitation, and repetition. Each generation entered the world prepared to recognize one of its oldest dangers. The first human safety lessons were therefore never spoken. They were felt at the edge of the water, repeated in daily life, and remembered in the body rather than the mind. Through this quiet transmission, fear preserved countless futures before knowledge existed to justify it. As the climate shifted and great ice sheets spread across large portions of the world, water became even more dangerous than before. Early humans faced environments colder than anything their ancestors had known. Rivers fed by melting glaciers rushed with tremendous speed, carrying debris and freezing temperatures that removed heat from the body almost instantly. In warm climates, falling into water was often fatal because of depth. In cold climates, it was fatal because of time. The moment a person entered near freezing water, Breathing lost rhythm. Muscles tightened uncontrollably. The body gasped involuntarily, often inhaling water. Even if the individual remained conscious, strength vanished quickly as temperature dropped. Early humans did not understand hypothermia, but they observed its result. People who entered icy rivers rarely returned alive. This changed migration behavior. Human groups moving across glacial landscapes depended on river crossings to reach new hunting grounds. But crossing directly through deep water became nearly impossible. A single mistake ended not only the traveler's life, but also threatened the survival of the group waiting on the opposite side. Fear guided route selection. Instead of choosing shortest paths, groups followed riverbanks for long distances, searching for safer locations. They crossed where channels split into multiple shallow streams. Gravel bars and braided rivers became preferred routes, even if they added days of travel. Caution outweighed urgency. Archaeological evidence suggests repeated patterns of detours. Migration paths curve along waterways rather than intersecting them directly. This indicates consistent avoidance of deep, cold crossings. Humans were not mapping territory scientifically. They were responding to internal resistance, reinforced by observation of previous losses. Ice added another hidden threat. Frozen surfaces sometimes supported weight, sometimes collapsed without warning. A person stepping onto thin ice disappeared instantly into water colder than the air. The shock prevented recovery. Groups learned to distrust smooth, reflective surfaces during winter, just as they distrusted dark water during summer. The brain treated these environments similarly. Both involved uncertain support beneath the feet. Both punished confidence immediately. Therefore, the same emotional alarm activated hesitation. Individuals who moved slowly and tested ground survived more often than those who trusted appearances. Hunting practices adapted accordingly. Animals often gathered near water openings in ice. While this provided opportunity, it also increased risk. Hunters learned to approach carefully and position themselves on stable ground before engaging prey. A successful hunt was worthless if the hunter fell through unstable surface. Children and elderly members depended on this caution most. During migration, weaker individuals were especially vulnerable. The group's survival required protecting them. Careful path selection allowed everyone to cross safely rather than sacrificing members to speed. Fear, therefore, supported social cohesion as well as individual survival. Seasonal timing became critical. Crossings were planned during periods of lowest water flow or thickest stable ice. Waiting for the correct moment sometimes meant enduring hunger longer, but the alternative meant losing irreplaceable people. Patience again proved a survival advantage. Over generations, the memory of cold water danger intensified instinctive reaction. Even individuals who had never experienced freezing rivers felt stronger discomfort near fast cold water than near warm, shallow streams. The body anticipated extreme consequence based on inherited patterns of mortality. The Ice Age reinforced a fundamental principle. Water was not simply an obstacle. It was a boundary that demanded respect and timing. Those who ignored the warning signals embedded in perception disappeared from migration lines. Those who obeyed them continued the journey and passed their caution to descendants. As humans spread across continents, this lesson traveled with them. Whether facing glacial rivers in the north or seasonal floods in temperate regions, the response remained consistent. Slow approach, careful testing, and avoidance of uncertain depth preserved lives repeatedly. The instinct strengthened with every generation that survived harsh climates. In this way, fear of deep water did not limit human expansion. It enabled it. For early humans, crossing water was never routine. Every river divided safety from uncertainty. Beyond it might lie food, shelter, or migration routes, yet the attempt itself carried a risk greater than most hunts. A failed hunt meant hunger. A failed crossing meant disappearance. Because of this, water crossings became moments where natural selection acted immediately and visibly. The group would gather at the edge and wait. They observed the current, watched floating debris, and listened to the sound of moving water. Even without understanding fluid dynamics, they sensed that speed mattered. Fast water pulled harder than calm water. Dark water hid depth. Cold water removed strength quickly. Their bodies reacted with unease long before any conscious plan formed. Some individuals felt stronger hesitation than others. Those who resisted stepping forward forced the group to search longer for safer passages. At times, this may have seemed frustrating, especially during hunger, but repeated outcomes proved the value. Groups that waited found shallower channels. Groups that rushed lost members. Over generations, cautious individuals indirectly guided migration success. The crossing point itself shaped survival. Braided rivers divided into multiple streams allowed gradual passage. Each section could be tested separately. If footing failed in one part, retreat remained possible. Deep single-channel crossings offered no second chance. Early humans repeatedly chose the first type, even when longer. This behavior appears across many prehistoric migration routes. Fear influenced leadership decisions. The person deciding when to cross held responsibility for lives. Individuals who ignored internal warning signals risked the group's trust. Those who listened to discomfort and delayed crossing protected everyone. Over time, social respect likely favored leaders who demonstrated caution near water rather than boldness. Tools emerged from hesitation. Branches used to test depth became standard practice. Stones thrown ahead revealed slope and current strength. These were simple actions, but they show an important transition. Fear did not only stop movement, it encouraged investigation before movement. This pattern later became a foundation for problem solving in many areas. Cold regions intensified the selection pressure. Falling into icy water removed the possibility of rescue. Even companions standing nearby could rarely pull someone out in time. Groups learned that prevention was the only defense. The most reliable method was careful testing and gradual entry. Children observe these crossings closely. They learn not through instruction, but through watching repeated rituals. Step slowly, test ground, keep distance between individuals, hold stable objects when possible. These behaviors became embedded habits before adulthood. Seasonal knowledge combined with instinct. Communities returned to familiar crossing locations year after year, yet still approached them cautiously. Memory suggested safety, but instinct demanded verification. This balance between remembering and rechecking protected against environmental changes such as flooding or erosion. Many migrations likely depended on this behavior. Human expansion across continents required passing countless rivers and wetlands. A population lacking deep water caution would lose too many members to sustain travel. The instinct, therefore, functioned as a filter, allowing only groups with sufficient hesitation to continue moving outward. Over thousands of years, these small decisions accumulated. Every safe crossing preserved future generations. Every fatal misjudgment ended a lineage. The result was gradual strengthening of inherited caution across the species. What began as slight discomfort became powerful resistance to uncertain depth. This resistance did not eliminate water interaction. Humans still fished, drank, and followed waterways, but they approached them with deliberate awareness. The difference lay in pace and preparation. Rapid entry disappeared from typical behavior patterns, except in emergencies. Eventually, as tools improved and swimming knowledge increased, crossings became less dangerous. Yet the emotional response remained. Even skilled swimmers today instinctively search for bottom reference before stepping into natural water. The mind still assumes ancient conditions where skill offered little protection. Water crossings therefore acted as evolutionary tests, not tests of strength or courage, but of restraint. Those who respected uncertainty lived long enough to reach new lands. Those who ignored it did not continue the journey. Through countless migrations, fear selected survivors more reliably than bravery ever could. Long after humans began forming languages and telling stories, the behavior around deep water did not change. People still hesitated at the edge. They still warned children to stay back. But now they began explaining the danger through narrative rather than instinct alone. They said the water was alive. Across distant regions separated by oceans and thousands of years, cultures described remarkably similar ideas. Rivers pulled people under because spirits lived beneath them. Lakes demanded respect, or they would take a life in return. Dark pools were entrances to another world. These explanations differed in detail, but shared a common purpose: to reinforce caution where understanding was incomplete. Early humans did not know about lungs filling with water or the shock of sudden immersion. What they knew was disappearance. A person stepped forward and did not return. Without visible cause, the mind created agency. Something must have acted. Something beneath the surface must have chosen. Stories became safety tools. Children remembered narratives far better than warnings. A simple instruction might be ignored, but a tale about a presence below the water created emotional memory. Fear strengthened and remained active even when adults were not watching. Culture began supporting the same instinct evolution had already created. Many myths specifically warned against still, dark water. Fast streams were often seen as pathways, but silent pools were treated with special caution. They were described as bottomless or connected to hidden realms. The language exaggerated reality, yet the behavior it produced was accurate. Such waters often hid steep drop-offs where footing vanished suddenly. Night intensified these beliefs. Reflections of moonlight turned surfaces into mirrors. Depth became impossible to judge. Stories described night water as most dangerous because unseen beings moved freely there. In practical terms, this discouraged nighttime approach, preventing accidental falls in low visibility. These patterns appear worldwide. From northern forests to tropical floodplains, independent societies created almost identical warnings about deep water. This consistency suggests the stories did not spread from one origin, but emerged wherever humans faced similar risk. The shared experience of silent disappearance produced shared narrative structure. Myth functioned as inherited memory. Not genetic memory, but cultural preservation of survival lessons. Each generation transmitted caution through symbols. The details changed, but the rule remained: keep distance from unknown depth. Fear became acceptable and even respected rather than dismissed. Communities treated certain locations as forbidden. Particular lakes or river bends gained reputations for danger. Whether or not a creature existed there mattered less than the behavioral outcome. People avoided unstable banks and deep pools. The myth preserved lives even without scientific explanation. Rituals reinforced boundaries. Offerings, pauses, and respectful gestures before approaching water slowed movement. Slowness itself increased safety. A person performing ritual naturally tested footing and observed surroundings. Cultural behavior, therefore, synchronized with practical survival strategy. Adults also felt comfort in explanation. Unpredictable death is psychologically difficult to accept. By attributing intention to water, communities could understand loss, but the more important effect was preventative. The emotional weight of story ensured continued caution even during routine activities. Fear became structured knowledge. Instead of random discomfort, it gained meaning and direction. Children knew not only to hesitate, but why within their understanding. The explanation may not have matched physical reality, yet it guided correct action reliably. Over time, these beliefs spread alongside human migration. New environments produced new variations, but the central theme remained unchanged. Deep water deserved respect because it could take life without warning. The repetition across cultures demonstrates how strongly this danger shaped human perception. Thus, mythology preserved an ancient survival advantage. Long before science could describe drowning, story ensured people behaved as if they already understood it. As human groups spread into new territories, they carried tools, language, and memory. Among the most persistent memories were those connected to water. Every region had different landscapes, yet the same warning appeared repeatedly. Deep water was described not as a simple feature of nature, but as a place with intention. Some stories spoke of beings that pulled from below. Others described voices calling from beneath the surface. In certain regions, calm lakes were said to hide entrances to another realm. The details varied widely, yet all shared a consistent instruction: do not approach carelessly. These stories did not require direct witnesses to remain effective. Even individuals who had never seen drowning behaved cautiously because narrative created expectation. A person raised with such warnings approached water slowly, scanned the ground, and avoided unknown depth. The myth succeeded because it produced correct behavior rather than accurate explanation. Generations refined the warnings. Locations where people repeatedly disappeared gained stronger reputations. Communities avoided them even during scarcity. Practical survival knowledge became attached to memorable storytelling. Over time, the emotional impact of the tale mattered more than its literal truth. Travelers carried these ideas between groups. When encountering unfamiliar waterways, they applied the same caution they learned at home. A new river was treated with the same respect as the old one. This universal behavior reduced fatalities in unknown environments where no local experience existed yet. Night and silence played large roles in these traditions. Dark water reflecting stars or moonlight appeared empty yet threatening. Without visible movement, the imagination filled the gap. Stories warned that stillness itself was a sign of danger. Practically, still deep water often concealed steep drop-offs. The narrative encouraged distance exactly where distance was needed. Adults also relied on the stories. Even experienced individuals felt unease when alone near deep water at night. The explanation of unseen presence gave shape to instinctive discomfort. Rather than ignoring the feeling, they respected it. Respect meant caution, and caution preserved life. Over long periods, the story became tradition. Certain actions near water were avoided not because people analyzed risk each time, but because it felt improper to act otherwise. Cultural rules stabilized behavior across entire communities. A child visiting any water source knew instinctively how far to stand back. The same pattern appears in many forms of oral history. Warnings against running near riverbanks, entering unfamiliar pools, or approaching water in darkness were embedded in everyday advice. They required no demonstration of physics to be effective. They relied on emotion and memory. When technology later improved safety, the stories persisted. Boats, swimming skill, and bridges reduced danger, yet people still told the same warnings to children. The instinct remained beneath modern knowledge. Even safe environments triggered inherited caution supported by tradition. This persistence shows the depth of the original threat. A behavior repeated across countless generations becomes difficult to remove entirely. The brain retains emotional reactions long after conditions change. What once prevented fatal mistakes now appears as generalized fear, but its origin was precise. Myth, therefore, acted as reinforcement, not creation. The instinct existed first. Story ensured it remained active. Together, they formed a durable survival system combining biology and culture. Each generation inherited both the feeling and the explanation. As humans built more complex societies, these narratives continued guiding behavior at water's edge. They preserved ancient caution even when daily life grew safer, carrying forward the memory of an environment that had shaped survival since the earliest days of the species. The human reaction to deep water is not simply imagination or cultural habit. It begins inside the brain, in structures far older than language or reasoning. Long before conscious thought forms, sensory information travels through neural pathways that decide whether to allow movement or to stop it. At the center of this process lies the amygdala. This small region evaluates potential threat using patterns rather than logic. It does not ask whether danger is proven, it asks whether danger could exist. If the answer is uncertain, it activates caution. For most environments, vision supplies enough information to reassure the brain. Solid ground can be seen, distance can be judged, the body moves forward. Deep water interrupts this certainty. When the eye cannot detect the bottom, the brain receives incomplete data about support. Humans rely heavily on visual confirmation to maintain balance. Without it, the nervous system treats the surface as unstable even before any physical contact occurs. Muscles tighten automatically to prevent stepping into an unpredictable condition. This happens extremely quickly. Signals reach the amygdala faster than conscious interpretation reaches the thinking parts of the brain. A person feels unease before understanding why. The mind then invents explanations afterward, but the reaction has already begun. Evolution designed this speed because waiting for reasoning would take too long in environments where a single step could end life. Depth perception plays a critical role. The human visual system compares texture, shadow, and contrast to estimate distance. Water removes these cues. Reflection replaces texture. Darkness hides gradient. The brain, therefore, cannot calculate safe footing. Instead of trusting uncertain data, it defaults to caution. Balance systems reinforce the effect. Inner ear structures detect head position and movement relative to gravity. When visual information conflicts with expected ground support, the body produces a backward lean or hesitation. This response is protective. It prevents commitment of weight until stability is confirmed. Even modern humans experience this daily. Standing on a transparent surface above great height produces a similar reaction. The body resists stepping despite knowing intellectually that support exists. The mechanism is identical. The brain protects against environments historically associated with irreversible falls. Water triggers this system strongly because it combines several uncertainties. It hides depth, shifts position, and removes traction simultaneously. The nervous system, therefore, treats it as a high priority condition. The reaction feels emotional, but originates from sensory conflict resolution designed to prevent fatal error. Children demonstrate the system clearly. Before learning about drowning, they pause at edges automatically. No instruction is required because the brain recognizes incomplete support cues. Over time, experience and culture modify behavior, but do not remove the initial signal. The alarm also intensifies under low light. When darkness reduces visual certainty further, the brain increases caution level. This explains why night water produces stronger fear than daytime water, even in identical locations. The system responds proportionally to available information. Importantly, this reaction does not depend on swimming ability. A skilled swimmer still feels hesitation when unable to see the bottom. Knowledge does not deactivate the deeper circuit. The body remembers conditions where skill offered no protection, and it continues acting accordingly. Thus, fear of deep water represents a specialized detection mechanism. Rather than signaling presence of an attacker, it signals absence of reliable ground. It is a prediction of possible loss of support. The sensation is uncomfortable because it must override curiosity and forward movement effectively. Over evolutionary time, individuals with weaker signals stepped too far too often. Those with stronger signals survived longer. The human brain therefore tuned its sensitivity carefully to conditions that historically caused immediate fatal outcomes. This internal alarm remains active today, unchanged in principle from prehistoric environments where it first preserved human lives. Human thought works in layers. The outer layer handles reasoning, language, and planning. Beneath it lies a faster system designed only for survival. When facing certain environments, the deeper system acts before the thinking mind has time to evaluate the situation. Fear of deep water belongs to this older layer. The body reacts before explanation appears. A person standing near a dark shoreline may suddenly feel tension in the chest or a pull backward in posture. Only afterward does the mind search for a reason. The explanation may vary, but the physical response has already limited movement. Evolution favored this order because analysis requires time, and in some conditions, time does not exist. Water historically removed opportunity for correction. If a human misjudged depth on land, balance could often be recovered. But stepping into unseen deep water rarely allowed recovery. Therefore, the nervous system learned to intervene before commitment of weight. The feeling itself became the barrier. This reaction follows a predictable path. Visual input reaches the brain and fails to confirm ground support. The amygdala interprets uncertainty as potential fatal risk. Motor areas receive inhibitory signals. Muscles tense and forward motion slows. Conscious awareness then interprets the sensation as fear. The sequence is important. Fear is not the result of thinking about danger. Thinking about danger is the result of fear activating first. The emotion exists to shape action, not to reflect on it. In prehistoric conditions, individuals who waited for logical proof often acted too late. Memory strengthens the reaction. Once a person hears about or observes a water accident, the emotional response intensifies. The brain links inherited caution with personal knowledge. This combination produces powerful avoidance, even in safe situations. The mechanism originally prevented repetition of fatal mistakes within small communities. The reaction generalizes beyond water. Dark holes, deep wells, and unstable surfaces trigger similar feelings because they share the same missing support cues. However, water remains the strongest trigger because it hides depth completely and moves unpredictably. Artificial environments reveal the system clearly. Standing beside a large pool with opaque water can produce unease despite knowing its boundaries. The mind trusts measurement, but the deeper system trusts perception. If perception lacks confirmation, caution remains active. Cultural learning modifies but does not erase it. Swimming lessons, lifeguards, and barriers reduce actual risk. Yet the initial hesitation persists. The brain continues to treat unknown depth as immediate danger, because for most of human existence, that assumption was correct. The persistence across individuals shows its biological origin. People from different societies display similar reactions. even without shared stories. The response does not require belief in spirits or previous accidents. It emerges from sensory processing designed long before modern safety existed. Importantly, the feeling also fades with visible information. Clear, shallow water produces minimal hesitation because the brain confirms support. The same person comfortable in clear water may resist entering dark water of identical depth. The difference lies entirely in perception certainty. This demonstrates the system's precision. It does not fear water itself. It fears the unknown beneath it. The reaction is calibrated to uncertainty rather than substance. That calibration once separated survival from disappearance countless times. Over generations, the mind learned to trust discomfort. Ignoring it carried heavy consequences. Respecting it cost only time. Natural selection, therefore, reinforced obedience to the signal. The modern experience of unexplained unease at deep water is the continuation of this ancient decision strategy. The feeling comes first, because it had to. Only afterward did humans develop the knowledge to understand what it had been protecting them from all along. As human societies grew more complex, their relationship with water began to change. Rivers became transportation routes, lakes became food sources for larger communities. Coastal regions supported permanent settlements. Yet, despite increasing dependence on water, one pattern remained consistent. People built near water, but rarely directly on top of it. Early villages appeared slightly elevated above flood level. This was not engineering in the modern sense. It was inherited caution shaping collective decisions. Communities instinctively avoided the lowest ground, even when it offered easier access to water. The inconvenience of walking a short distance outweighed the risk of sudden flooding or nighttime accidents. Generations who respected this instinct survived seasonal changes more reliably. Agriculture reinforced the pattern. Fertile soil formed near rivers because of periodic flooding. Humans wanted to farm this land, yet they still avoided placing homes in the lowest zones. Fields occupied risky areas, but sleeping and gathering areas stayed higher. The difference shows a clear boundary between necessary risk and avoidable risk. Fear helped humans separate the two. The first paths reflected hesitation. Trails approached water gradually rather than directly descending steep banks. Repeated foot traffic carved gentle slopes where people felt safer walking. These natural ramps later became permanent access points. Even without formal planning, communities collectively modified terrain in ways that reduced the chance of accidental falls. Bridges appeared only after long hesitation. Before building structures across rivers, humans searched extensively for shallow crossings. Crossing at depth remained psychologically difficult even when tools improved. Early bridges were narrow and carefully placed, often at the same locations previously chosen for natural fording. Technology followed instinct rather than replacing it. Boats did not remove fear immediately. The earliest watercraft were small and unstable. People entered them cautiously and close to shore. Many communities limited travel to calm conditions and daylight. The emotional system still treated deep water as a lethal environment. Only repeated safe experiences gradually reduced avoidance behavior. Ports developed slowly. Even in settled communities, young individuals were kept away from deep water unless supervised. Teaching swimming came later. Prevention remained primary. The inherited fear continued protecting those too inexperienced to understand risk. Over time, knowledge explained the instinct. People discovered buoyancy, currents, and swimming techniques. But explanation followed survival, not the reverse. The instinct existed long before the science describing it. Civilization progressed by gradually replacing unknown depth with known structure. Harbors illustrate this transformation. Natural coastlines are irregular and unpredictable. Humans built piers and breakwaters to calm water and define boundaries. These structures turned threatening environments into manageable ones. The psychological comfort they provided encouraged trade and travel. Yet even today, the edge remains powerful. Standing at an unmarked cliff above deep ocean still produces hesitation. The body responds as it did thousands of years ago. Modern infrastructure hides much of the danger, but the underlying reaction persists. Civilization did not eliminate fear of deep water. It learned to cooperate with it, shaping environments until the ancient alarm allowed closer approach. Human history can be understood as a gradual negotiation with ancient fears. Fire was once uncontrollable. Heights were once fatal. Deep water was once nearly absolute death. Yet unlike some dangers that could be confronted directly, water demanded a different path. It required humans to transform the environment before they could transform their behavior. This pattern extends beyond water. Human progress repeatedly follows the same structure. An ancient fear identifies danger. Knowledge then builds structures to reduce uncertainty. Eventually, confidence grows. But the initial survival signal remains as foundation. Fear of deep water once preserved countless human lives. It prevented impulsive steps. It slowed movement near shifting edges. It kept children from leaning too far. It guided migration routes and settlement placement. Without it, early human populations would have suffered greater losses, perhaps enough to alter expansion entirely. Today, when standing at the edge of deep ocean and feeling that subtle hesitation, one experiences the echo of that history. The sensation is not weakness, it is continuity. It is the inherited memory of a world where caution at the boundary between visible ground and hidden depth determined whether the future would exist at all. In that sense, fear did not limit humanity. It ensured humanity survived long enough to master the waters it once approached only with trembling restraint. Long after technology reduced the danger, the human reaction remained. A modern person can stand safely behind a barrier overlooking deep ocean water and still feel a pull backward in posture. There is no immediate threat. The ground is stable. The height is known. Yet, the body tightness appears before any reasoning. This reaction does not belong to the present environment. It belongs to an older world the nervous system still remembers. Human perception was shaped during a time when most environments were predictable except one. Forests had sounds, plains had visibility, mountains had edges that could be seen. Water alone could appear stable while hiding fatal conditions beneath its surface. Because the senses could not reliably verify safety, the brain chose the only workable strategy: assume danger when certainty is missing. The modern world rarely presents such absolute consequences. A person today may step into a swimming pool, feel panic for a moment, and then realize they can stand. The reaction fades quickly because experience contradicts expectation. But the initial response still occurs because evolution prepared the mind for irreversible outcomes rather than mild discomfort. The difference between then and now is not the emotion itself, but the probability attached to it. In prehistoric environments, the feeling accurately predicted lethal risk. In modern environments, it predicts a possibility that is usually controlled. The nervous system has not recalibrated because the evolutionary timescale is far longer than the span of civilization. This explains why deep water produces stronger reactions than many objectively more dangerous situations. A person may drive at high speed calmly, yet hesitate at the edge of a calm, dark lake. The mind consciously understands vehicle risk, but the older system responds more strongly to environmental uncertainty resembling ancient conditions. The body does not measure statistics. It measures patterns. If a pattern historically correlated with immediate disappearance, it remains classified as high priority. Deep water matches that pattern precisely. It removes visible support and prevents recovery once committed. Even trained individuals experience it. Divers, sailors, and swimmers often describe an instinctive pause before entering dark natural water despite extensive experience. Training modifies action, but rarely eliminates the initial sensation. The deeper brain layer continues performing its original task. This persistence has value even today. Modern drownings still occur primarily in conditions resembling ancient risks: poor visibility, unexpected depth, and unstable footing. The inherited caution still prevents countless accidents by causing people to step carefully where they otherwise might not. The instinct also shaped human curiosity. Because water was both necessary and dangerous, humans approached it gradually. Observation preceded entry, testing preceded trust. This pattern later became a general cognitive strategy applied to unfamiliar situations beyond water environments. In this way, fear influenced intelligence. It forced humans to pause and evaluate before acting. The habit of hesitation near uncertain conditions encouraged planning behavior. What began as a simple survival mechanism contributed indirectly to more complex decision-making across human history. The emotional response therefore carries more than protective function. It reflects the process through which humans learn to interact with unpredictable environments. Rather than eliminating uncertainty, they learn to manage it step by step. Deep water was one of the first challenges requiring this approach. Modern safety equipment represents the final stage of that progression. Life jackets, marked depths, and barriers provide the visual certainty the brain always sought. By supplying reliable information, they calm the ancient alarm. The instinct remains present, but the environment now answers its question, is there support or not? Yet, in untouched, natural settings, the old rules return immediately. A quiet shoreline at dusk produces the same hesitation felt by ancestors thousands of years ago. The reaction crosses culture and upbringing because it originates deeper than learned behavior. It is a shared inheritance carried by every human nervous system. The memory never needed words to persist. It traveled through sensation rather than story, through reflex rather than explanation. Even after understanding drowning scientifically, people still feel the original warning exactly as it once functioned. This continuity reveals something essential about human survival. Progress did not erase ancient instincts. It built upon them. The hesitation that once kept a small group alive beside a river still guides a modern individual standing beside an ocean. Time changed the world, but not the core signal that first allowed humanity to endure it.